Hi. This next gentleman is an extraordinary curiosity. He is nature itself, and a witness to the quietude and the grace of nature, the growing of the grass. Imagine watching grass grow, as it were, literally, figuratively, and metaphorically. Well, Howard has done this with such extraordinary grace as being a forester and a naturalist, and through his many, many years of observing and writing down the witness. So it gives me great pleasure, there goes my tongue. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Howard Horowitz. Sir.
Thank you. Before I begin, I just want to mention that I've worked on a poem over the years. My poems get revised and revised and revised. I work them, put them down, pick them up again 10 years later, work them some more. So they're all like that. And my first publication actually was 1968. So it's been a while of writing poems. Although there's been many years before I used to publish books sometimes and submit them, but I rarely do anymore. And so I'm gearing up, having retired from teaching a couple of years ago. I'm working much more in poetry than ever before, and do visualize finishing a bunch of long unfinished work. And one of the things I just want to mention is that I wrote a poem a few years back called The Wallkill Watershed. It's one of a series of river poems.
You have to show this on the camera.
It reads from the bottom to the top. Oh, there we go, yeah. It reads from the bottom to the top, but it turns out that it was mishandled in the Wawayanda Review, a magazine that came out about 5 or 10 years ago. But somehow, a woman who I didn't know, named Susan Charity, found it and figured out how to reconstruct it properly, and did so, and made a poster out of it, illustrating with drawings. It was wonderful, and that just happened about a week, just we finished about a week ago. So I'm going to work with her now on another longer poem to also illustrate it. And it's called The Wawayanda Watershed, and I can't read it here because it's 10 pages long. It would take more than half an hour to read it. In the future, that will happen. But I thought I might read, I could read part of this one, which is a poem about the Wallkill watershed.
Yeah, just
It probably makes sense to do that. I'm going to read only half because it's too long, and then I would like to read something else as well, if you can. We'll see what your tolerance is at that point. This poem, The Wallkill Watershed, is one of these geographical poems. Because the Wallkill flows from south to north, the poem reads from bottom to top. And so one has to, if people just pick it up and start reading it from the top to the bottom, it won't make any sense, which usually most people don't read poetry well anyway, so they just figure, oh, well, it's hard to understand. But for those few that actually figure out that they read from the bottom to the top, then it will be a coherent poem to read. Yeah.
sorry. Why does the Wallkill flow north?
Well, because it's more up, it's higher in elevation in northern New Jersey than it is when it reaches the Hudson River. As many rivers actually flow north as do south. It's a common myth that few rivers flow north, but actually in North America, Mackenzie flows north. The Yukon flows north part of the way. In Russia, all these big rivers flow north. Lots of rivers flow north. It just so happens that it's kind of around here, a lot of them are flowing south because the mountains tend to be our north. But in the case of the Wallkill, it's higher in northern New Jersey than it is in the Hudson, so it flows north. Anyway, this is going from New Jersey, basically from the headwaters to where we'll stop it, which is going to be in the black dirt bottomlands. Seeping from moss-covered ledges on Sparta Mountain, water filters through saturated soils into Lake Mohawk. The outlet enters Sparta, a small urban landscape. Dripping from hemlock needles into reed-filled wetlands, freshets cascade off rocky slopes on Hamburg Mountain. Rain-swollen rills course through old zinc tailings at once bustling Sterling Hill and Franklin mines. now museums with rare fluorescent minerals. Kittatinny runoff flows east through Publicati wetlands to discharge in a floodplain. The lush National Wildlife Refuge is still home for beaver and muskrat, abundant before the drowned lands were drained for agriculture. Free splashing creeks, the Longhouse, Stucky, and Doublekill, tumble north through deep forest gorges across the state line to Warwick, once a busy Lenape village. Waters flow by kids fishing at Baird's Farm, by Art and Mozart at Pachaman Terrace, by cows grazing in Wawayanda fields. Wallkill and Pochuck waters converge in Pine Island. The flat bed of a Pleistocene lake now grows onions and sod. The streams are channelized for the irrigation of black dirt bottomland. Two frogs sit on lily pads in Glenmere Lake, overlooked by a restored mansion. Below the aging dam in Gristmill, streambanks erode by Old Randallville and cross Florida, flowing west along the road towards Quaker Creek and black dirt bottomlands. So that's the southern portion of the Wallkill watershed. And I'm going to read something totally different now. I would say that I've been doing this Wawayanda watershed, but it's way, way long. And next month I'll read it aloud. Not yet. But this is a very, very different poem, one that I started writing 30 years ago, but have revised and now feel finished with it. It's about Ramapo. It's about Ramapo. I've taught there for many years, and it's a poem about the college, but it's also about geography and other things. It's called the Ramapo Fault. As you may know, there is a very big and famous fault line that runs along the boundary of the Ramapo Mountains. The Ramapo Fault. The college's beautiful view rests on a shaky foundation. Sediments so thick they obscure where the fault really lies. The landscape reveals what we overlook: the pond, the windows, the woods around campus, the parking lot, the estate grounds, the river flowing along the scarp, people living in the hills, the alternate energy center, and mountains thrust up long ago. 2. The pond, like the model student, reflects back what it receives, an image of beauty and grace. But just below the surface, it's murky and shallow. And like the professor standing behind the podium, a bit prone to stagnation. Both pond and professor may be slightly overfed, but don't be surprised to find a rare turtle or a largemouth bass in these waters. 3. No breeze can pass through the big plate glass windows of modern classrooms and offices, though the tree-covered mountain across the river provides a grand view. Sometimes hot air, sealed in stagnant rooms, resists experts trying to fix the ventilation. At least the picture windows let us see clearly through the seductive dreams of engineers. 4. The woods are strewn with boulders, an Ice Age gift old-time farmers were not thankful for. Countless rocks, chiseled and hewn, were placed in walls that outlived their makers and their fields. Forgotten now, these linear stone piles divide leafy wood from leafy wood, beauty and solitude at the edge of campus. Few students learn that artifacts of a native village are buried under the parking lot. Some were hastily collected by local archaeologists before bulldozers prepared to lay the asphalt. After parking, we walk up the glaciofluvial terrace to classrooms. On the way back down at night, we may cross paths with a skunk, a raccoon, or an albino groundhog. 6. A century ago, the grounds were a grand estate. Theodore Havemeyer controlled the world's sugar, and Stephen Birch founded Kennecott Copper. The Birch Mansion houses college administration. The old swimming pool was filled with gravel and hidden under lawn. Blandina Bayard built a trading post by the river over 300 years ago. The old La Roe Van Horn house nearby was abused by New Ramapo College as presidential housing, then student housing, then restored after the college sold it. 2 old graveyards can be found nearby the river, one for the masters, another for servants. 7. The Ramapo River flows south along the fault near campus fields. Close by, wells draw water from aquifer gravel to supply faucets for Moa, as the locals say it. The river spills over its banks every few years, flooding ball fields, basements of polo club mansions, and living rooms of bungalows downstream in Pompton and Wayne. Some homeowners blame the government and call for riprap, flood tunnels, and such. We spend millions to rebuild the river, but do little to prepare for a quake. The fault has been asleep for so long, it was forgotten in our choices. For example, nuclear waste placed right under where it crossed the Hudson at Peekskill. A little slip might shake us up. A bigger one might wake us up. A real strike would bowl us over. 8. The Ramapo Fault reveals an ancient rift, the Mesozoic separation from Africa. The scarp also delineates a local separation. To the east, sediments and coastal plain. To the west, metamorphic highlands. East, a maze of freeways, strip malls, houses, and lawns spread like spaghetti on a plate. Fill the valley and press against the slope. The mountains are a green, wooded refuge. The turtle, wolf, and deer clans of the Ramapo Indians have lived in the hills for centuries. Though descended from Algonquin and Lenape, tribal recognition was blocked for years by Trump's casino lobby. Shamefully, they were scorned by generations of racist writers. Quote, a degenerate lot, living squalid lives, their homes like unwholesome fungi sully the wilds, just 30 miles from the heart of the world's greatest city, wrote Francis Ensign Green in 1941 in the American Mercury. That's typical of that text. The Ramapos own 14 acres across the river from campus, and in April, they open Earth Day with a shared circle ceremony. Powwows draw people from other tribes around the continent, but not all gatherings are celebration. Battles to stop Ford paint sludge, pollution, and gas pipelines continue today. Mountains give shelter from the affluence below, and the college provides jobs. Chief Ronald Redbone Van Dunk drove down to campus each night to mop the floors. Over the years, his modest stories taught me lessons about reserve, patience, warmth, and wisdom. 9. The Alternate Energy Center was a homegrown assemblage of buildings, organic gardens, and windmills set in a field by the woods. Vegetarian volunteer volleyball got rare after Reagan killed the solar credit, and business became the most popular major. A few students still fed a few chickens, but not enough people kept up with the ever-encroaching weeds. Done for the day, I walked to the center, sat on a bench, and watched the windmill pumping furiously. The water tank was full, but the garden was empty. 10. The mountains would testify if we could listen to their silence instead of just hearing ourselves. Perhaps when they suddenly speak in a very loud voice, we'll be reminded that knowledge is not power, and what matters most stands the test of time. 1,000 empty cars fill the parking lot as the drivers sit in class, work on computers, drink coffee, look at cell phones or out windows, go to meetings, walk by the pond, or play ball down by the river. At the same time, a light breeze rustles through birch leaves falling in trout-stocked waters that flow gently along the Ramapo Fault.
Thank you.
It's a long, cold